jury instructions. So if you could, I know you want to get back in that courtroom, but tell us first, Chanley, what exactly is Lori facing?
Yeah, this is important, I think, to remind our viewers, because we know the prosecutors don't allege that she was the one that actually physically murdered her children or Tammy Daybell. So it's conspiracy, which requires a little more analysis and elements for this jury to go through, right? So she's facing several counts, of course, of conspiracy to commit murder for Tully Ryan, 7 overt acts that they put forward in the indictment for Tully, and plus the murder of Tully as a principal, so not the one who actually did it, but someone who encouraged it, coerced it, facilitated Tully's murder to happen. Same for JJ as well, as 6 overt acts for his murder, and of course principle of murdering JJ Vallow in the first degree, and then conspiracy only for the murder of Tammy Daybell, Chad's first wife. He's the only one charged with the actual murder as a principal for Tammy Daybell, but 10 overt acts alleged for the murder of Tammy Daybell, and then those grand theft charges as well, because they say that she stole her children's Social Security benefits after she knew they were murdered, and deceased pocketed it all, which funded that video we just played, Ashley, the Hawaiian resort condo rental months after her children were gone. So that's before this jury. Remember, there are 18 jurors right now. I've had my eyes on them for weeks, but before deliberations, 6 of them will be selected as alternates. They don't know who they are yet. We don't know who they are yet, but right now 10 men, 8 women have been so astute and attentive this whole time. You know, usually sometimes jurors, Ashley, I tell you, they look maybe disinterested or look up into the sky or yawn. I haven't noticed that at all in almost 5 weeks of testimony.
Wow, that is a little unusual, but I got to tell you, every time you come out of that courtroom, Chanley, and give us new details and information, I think I, too, would just be on the edge of my seat. There's always new information coming out. All right, thank you, Chanley Painter. I know you're going to get back in that courtroom and continue to bring us excellent updates there from Boise, Idaho. Now, I'd like to welcome my guests for this hour, criminal defense attorneys Maya Griggs and Joseph Tully. All right, here's what I'd like to do with you all. I want to take a deep dive on the count of murder that Lori Vallow Daybell faces for both of her children, JJ and Tully. And here's why. Because we're going to look at some of the evidence, and I want to get your opinions on whether or not it's the best evidence for the state's case or not. So here's the definition that I want to focus on, and that is under the laws in that state in Idaho, that both Lori and Chad charged with the murder of both children. So number 1, they were concerned in the commission of a first-degree murder. So you can kind of put that aside, not really an element too much, but they did aid and abet in its commission, the murder, or not being present. They don't have to be present, but if they advised and encouraged its commission, or another third alternative is by command compelled another to commit the crime. So Lori Vallow Daybell, she didn't have to kill the children physically. She could have done any one of those 3 things. Now let's look at the rest of the definition. Also, the state has to prove as an element that she did so with malice aforethought and did so willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation. So the first thing I think I want to look at is forensics. Let's just talk about the reality of one piece, one strand of hair belonging to Lori Vallow Daybell on duct tape. And remember, duct tape was found on JJ Vallow and the way that he was wrapped up and bound over his face, over his body. So, Joseph, let me start with you. Is that something you think of as the best evidence?
Yes, I think that's great evidence. I think that in terms of this case, I think it was charged very intelligently because there's not overwhelming amount of evidence putting these 2 actually involved in the commission, but that hair it really puts her at the scene, and it puts her in active commission in silencing the child before the child was killed.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's listen together, Maya, before I get your thoughts on it, to the exact testimony about the DNA that was found.
From the Bodie item E01, which was the hair sample, a partial female profile was obtained.
And were you able to make any conclusions based on those results?
Yes. Tully Ryan and Melanie Gibb were excluded as possible contributors of that partial DNA profile. The partial DNA profile matched the DNA profile that was provided for Lori Vallow Daybell.
Okay. Did you perform any statistics for the match?
Yes, I did. The probability of randomly selecting an unrelated individual with that partial DNA profile is 1 in 71 billion.
All right, so it's her hair. So Maya, does this give evidence to prove one of the elements of the murder count, in your opinion?
Absolutely. In a case that is so largely circumstantial, it is very helpful to have something that's actually there to place the defendant at the scene of the crime. I believe that in terms of the element requiring aiding and abetting, that's something that the state should rely heavily on when presenting their closing argument. So I believe that that evidence being present is extremely critical and is something that they need to focus on during closing arguments.
All right, let's turn now. I love having you both on to go through these different pieces of evidence that stood out to us as we were looking at everything the state had presented. So the next thing I want to talk about is really, you have to show that she planned with premeditation, was planning on having her children killed and aiding and abetting in some way to meet the definition of murder. So let's look at what some of April Raymond's testimony was and what she had to say about it.
She said that she had been appointed leader of one of the 144,000 and that she was there to gather me.
And what did you understand gather you meant?
To join her.
What did she say was going to be needed for you to do in order to join her in this group?
That I would need to be separated from my children.
Did she indicate why?
Basically that my children were raised, I'd fulfilled my role in their lives and that I had a greater calling, a greater mission to perform with her.
Who was visiting with Lori Vallow when she was at your home at this time?
Tully was with her.
Where was JJ?
JJ was with Charles, was my understanding.
Okay. And did the defendant say why she didn't bring JJ?
She said that she was done with JJ and that Charles and his sister Kay would need to figure it out.
All right, Joseph, just knowing what happened to JJ, to hear his own mother say, number one, done with JJ, but also talking to April and saying you would have to leave your children with your father. Do those two pieces taken together, Joseph, prove any of the elements in your opinion?
I certainly think that they do. It shows that this sort of pre-planning that happened leading up to the murders. However, looping back to the hair and DNA strand that we were just talking about, that's malice aforethought right there. When you put on duct tape on someone's mouth and then they later end up being killed, I don't think it's a stretch to say that that was part of the plan and that there's malice aforethought there.
What a great point. I agree with you in that. All right, Maya, let me ask you this, because again, really what the statute breaks down to is she either had to kill or assist in the killing or encourage the killing and or command another to kill. Any of those things could be true. So does it lay the groundwork to know that she's promoting this 144,000 where you have to leave your children with your father and then saying, I'm all done with JJ? Does that lend into the state's theory and also requirement to prove that perhaps she was then led to encourage the killing or assist in the killing?
Absolutely. I think that it's very important in explaining to the jurors how this plan and scheme came together. Most jurors, as well as most of us, are not familiar with how this cult-like behavior existed. And I think explaining to them the backdrop of it and educating them is going to be very important for them to understand this element of premeditation and the conspiracy component, there being a plan that happened beforehand that ultimately led to the death of these children.
Yeah, great points, both of you. I'm so grateful that you're going to be with me. We have a lot more to talk about in the 4 o'clock hour. We're going to bring you more of the evidence, best evidence that the state's brought to try to prove the charges against Lori Vallow Daybell. Up next, though, we're going to take you back to New Hampshire for more testimony in the minister murdered trial. Stay tuned. A family affair.
Ultimately, you had a brother and sister pitted against one another.
Who is the killer? Who done it?
Someone they knew with Tamron Hall. Tonight, 7/6 Central. Only on Court TV.